Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Agentic Quality Podcast. I'm your host, Tatyana Arbouzova. And today we have Suneet Malhotra with us, who is a quality engineering leader at Motorola Solutions. Welcome, Suneet.
Hello, how are you?
Doing great. Suneet, tell us more about your background. And you worked across some impressive companies. So, how did you get here?
Yeah, been in the industry for around 20 years now. Did my master's in computer science from USC. Accidentally ended up getting into quality space. Like I got a couple of internships and really started liking how, as a part of quality, you are kind of involved in the end-to-end life cycle of a product. So got into automation, worked at media companies like Oprah Winfrey Network, Ticketmaster. For the last 8, 10 years, been in the B2C space with Amazon Ring, Tinder, and recently joined Motorola. So really excited about how in the last few years, how AI and is changing how the quality works in the space day to day, and really excited about how I can keep up with the new changes and really contribute to the ever changing space in quality and automation.
Yeah, so many quality engineering leaders I talk to end up in quality by accident and not really on purpose and stay for 20 years, just like myself as well. So you've been in the industry for a long time. So what's the biggest shift that you've seen in the quality engineering in the last couple of years?
Yeah, always like last few years always have been like automation, unit testing, CI/CD. But what sort of a major shift have seen in the last, like, I would say 2 years, as we have seen with AI's LLMs exponentially improving, be it your ability to write code. First of all, it has really make it for anyone from any background to be really able to pick up any automation framework, programming languages, and be able to really leverage agentic AI and MCPs. So it's changing every day from like just writing every single automation with DOM elements verification to just using calling LLM and have it write tests for you. But now then it brings kind of challenges in terms of how do you trust AI? How do you evaluate the work it's doing? Is it doing false negatives, false positives, hallucinations? And how you are as a QA, how are you keeping up with the latest changes, latest tools and technologies coming up every week, if not every month? And how do you make sure you are able to keep up with the changes and be able to really be productive in your day-to-day work?
Yeah. Yeah, the LLMs enable us to use the plain English now to write test automation, which empowers so many manual testers. But you told me the story about creating the mobile test framework from scratch in a short amount of time. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, been in the automation space for around like 20 years now. I kind of started with very hard-coded tools to starting using Selenium, and then eventually working from either Java to TypeScript to Cypress to Playwright. So kind of how the automation frameworks have evolved. And previously, if you had to create a framework from scratch, it would take few months at least to really set up everything and start closely working with the other automation engineers to really be more productive in terms of how you implement that and then implement in CI/CD. And kind of personally for me too, like I was kind of leading a 20 plus team and across different time zones at Amazon. So I was kind of moving away from day-to-day automation and really kind of scaling our teams and projects across different features that we were launching. So I've kind of taken a backseat where I was more of guiding the right sort of architecture principles and my teams, my automation engineers day to day, but really got started to be more hands-on in the last year, where as I saw the shift with respect to using Claude Code or Codex, like you could, like you said, like it democratized the whole industry. You can just talk to LLM, and it will help like create scripts for you. And that's something kind of started Playwright, using Playwright with it. And what I kind of was able to really leverage Claude Code and Codex and really be able to use those two AIs to build automation framework from scratch for our mobile iOS and Android applications, leveraging Appium and other latest tools and technologies. So what I understand is like you have to have a good sense of what you are trying to get out of the AI that you're using, and you have to have understanding of how to leverage your skills, your background, and really be able to prompt it and use like loops and everything else to be able to really leverage the right output that you're looking from the LLM. And I can deep dive more onto that space as well, how I was able to leverage that to create automation framework from scratch. But yeah, it took me around like 2 to 3 weeks to really set up a good base framework with browser stack, and was really able to get it out to production use case within 3 weeks, which would be impossible even like early last year. So definitely.
That's definitely a change since, even like 3, 4 years ago of how long it would take. And it's great to see that you as a hands-off manager now turning into more using all of these tools and building all of this from scratch. I am hearing that a lot of companies are moving away from the middle management for that specific reason, right? So great to see this trend. And so how do you build these tools and make it standardized across the organization or across your team?
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, creating a tooling is one part, but in an industry like where the challenge lies, right? You have to coordinate with across different teams, a team of QA automation engineers, could be across different time zones or different sort of office spaces. Everyone is online or remote or in a different time zones, right? So the challenge comes in, and that's just not the QA team. It's like, let's say you need to still coordinate with product, design teams, engineers, DevOps. How do you then put all these um, uh, shared sort of skills or loops that you build, right? And how do you make sure you are able to utilize that across different sort of roles? Because the end goal is like you want to get a feature live in a production to users, and obviously much faster as you can incrementally every week or if every 2 weeks to the users. How do you do that effectively while you are, as individual role, you are improving productivity with using AI tools? And what I kind of was able to help leverage MCP, which is like a model context protocol, which is nothing but it's like a USB term for AI, where AI, let's say you're using Claude or Codex, it's just a way for the LLM to talk to your different applications. It could be Jira, Confluence, Figma, right? So that's how MCP talk to different applications, and your AI can talk to that and understand the context. So, and I can deep dive more as well, and kind of how I am able to leverage those and really build like end-to-end sort of a pipeline of testing and automation and put that into a different life cycle of the process. Happy
Yeah,
to deep
let's
dive
talk
more
about
as well.
that. Yeah, let's talk about that. How do you connect? How do you use these agents or MCP across SDLC? Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, definitely. I'm also, and as I learn this new sort of a ways to do work, and I'm also putting that into open source. So I'll probably leave that to you in the notes section for the users who can just download on my Git repo. It's open source where I have developed different sort of agents. So in this case, let's take an example. Let's say you are trying to get a login feature of any app or website live, right? So typically how things will work, your designer will come up with a, let's say, a Figma document with enough sort of a design, and now the next steps typically is like for a product manager to put that into requirements document, could be Confluence or some other way, right? So sometimes product might not have enough bandwidth, they will just direct QA to look at Figma and start writing test plan and test cases, right? But now what we are able to do is you, and typically in most of the companies, there is a MCP available, so you can work with DevOps or to set it up a Figma MCP. So let's say you're using Claude Code or Codex, you hook up that MCP, you set to AI like, hey, look at the Figma URL and help me design the and kind of a requirement document based on the context that you provide and the Figma design that you have, right? So one important caveat is each it could be your startup or company, right? Each company or team has their own context in terms of what are they trying to get out from that sort of a feature they're launching, right? So it's always good to kind of have that standardized sort of a context as a skills in a skill file, which is nothing but an MD file where you can just store that and provide enough context about, let's say, what features do you launch it in iOS, typically Android or web? What versions do you support as a team, right? Do you, what sort of other sort of a GTM strategy you have across your product team? So it's good to have that sort of a context in a skill. Otherwise, agent will pretty much start from scratch and they will pretty much put up an AI slop, which is then you have to work again to get to the right sort of a PRD requirement document, right? So having that enough context scale, you are able to get a 80% of high level sort of requirement document that you are trying to get out on a first sort of a initial phase. And then you kind of promptly work with AI in terms of if it's missing some other context edge cases, you continue to work with AI and provide enough context to get you a good enough of uh, documentation that you can, as a product manager, provide it to the dev team to start writing tickets. And I think the help kind of it helps, it gives you a 5x or 10x productivity in terms of getting all the sort of a high level requirements in there. And as a product manager, human in the loop, you can review the doc, help sort of uh, fix whatever changes you need. And that's how you go from a Figma to a product manager first stage of life cycle.
So if you want to add any context to your Claude, then you create the MD file. And so you gave us an example of a product manager agent, basically, where you can provide all of the context for what the product manager would do and maybe how they would do it and the product context and business logic and whatnot. And then your product manager agent would be using those instructions to act on by generating the user requirements based on Figma, for example, right? So what other agents do you have?
Yeah, so any role that you can think of, right? So you start from the initial life cycle, and you can even have a designer agent, right? So with the help of Figma MCP, they can also create design as well. So you can start with the initial layer of the first pipeline of design agent, product manager agent. Then what comes after that, right? Developer. As you can see, uh, all the major companies developers are using pretty much 80%, 90% of the code is being generated by AI, right? Cloud Code itself, 100% of the code is written by AI. So you have a developer agent, which again, you provide all the context about the GitHub repo, sort of a code best practices you have as a developer, right? So you provide again all the context in terms of what platform do you support, and kind of have that as an MD skill. Then you can share that across within your team. And then if some other, let's say there is a lead developer who kind of needs to tone it to more of a high level sort of a different skill set, he can tone that agent to his or her needs, right? But that's where you use that. Now, obviously, if 80% or 90% of code is being written by AI, how do you review all that sort of a 20,000, 30,000 line of code, right? You really need a solid sort of a PR reviewer agent. What you can do is you can use multiple AI and have them review their code. So let's say if you're building with Claude Code, you can use PR reviewer agent with multiple Gemini or Codex who can help review the code and provide the feedback. Otherwise, it's impossible for a human to read 100,000 of lines. So obviously, you need that PR reviewer agent in that life cycle. Yeah, you can use Jira MCP so that you're not really creating all the epics and tasks manually. The Jira MCP can just look at the conference document and kind of high level context in terms of what sort of a ticket, sort of how you write your tickets, can automatically create that process for you.
Mhm. Okay, so you have agents for every kind of different activities. And now, how do these agents work together? Like, what is the glue for these agents?
I mean, you can have a harness or orchestral at the top of it. How do you want to manage it? But that's for a startup where, let's say, you want to go end to end, pretty much without any human in the loop, which I would certainly avoid for any app or something that you're launching for customers like every day. You still want like human in the loop every single step of this process. So you can create your own harness in terms of how do you manage that, like what step, what agent is involved, right? So you can kind of put that sort of a LLM on the top of that orchestration layer who can manage like, hey, at what step, what agent role comes in, right? So like I said, a product manager, PR reviewer comes in the initial stages of the life cycle. Then you have a QA engineer agent who is expert in test rail, how a QA engineer write test cases, write automation, right? What kind of programming languages you use, what automation sort of a framework you have. And that's where the QA engineer, and I think for your listeners especially, that would be more beneficial. So in our case, we have a test rail which we use in my previous companies as well. You can use that MCP. But instead of manually writing all these hundreds of test cases, you literally point the Figma and a PRD, and then you create using TestRail MCP. You provide the context like, hey, this is how we write test cases in TestRail. This is how we like a steps prerequisite, and it will already understand like how you as a QA engineer, what sort of your way of writing test cases, and based on that, it will automatically create good amount of positive and negative test cases in TestRail. So you can use that, and again, human in the loop. You just don't want to blindly trust AI. So you want to make sure you review as a QA engineer. And from my experience, it's 70-80% accurate. You still have to continually work with AI in terms of what negative edge cases it might have missed. It might or not have enough context that you do day to day. That's where it's very crucial to have that human in the loop, a QA engineer who manages all these agents and literally improve it every day in terms of providing the feedback, in terms of what scenarios it might have missed. So that's where the QA engineer agent comes in.
Yeah, so basically you have the pipeline with the agents that flow, and then you ingest the human in the loop at various points to monitor all of that. And so what surprised you the most about this pipeline, and where does AI struggles the most in these end-to-end pipelines?
Yeah, what I've seen is, and I can give you like a uh, some recent example like I was working on where you can literally like provide a goal to your AI like, hey, I really want my pass rate to be, let's say, 95%. So work on the task and continue to work until you are able to get to me a 95% stability of my test run that I create, right? But typically what I would do is I will leave that running in the night and come back the next day and see like what sort of a task that my Claude code accomplished, right? And what I noticed was what it did was it just commented out 20% of my test cases and said like, hey, I accomplished your task of 95% stability, and I was able to comment out 10 failures, and I was like, that's
No.
so right. So that's where I still say like it is very important to kind of have that sort of a human in the loop or some AI who like reviews that sort of other AI, because if you trust the work, there is an issue where you might miss scenarios like this. That will result in real issues for customers. So you cannot really rely like 100% on that work. So that's a recent example that I highlight. I need to work with it. Hey, can you please ensure like next time you do not just comment out the test? And I kind of
Yeah,
have
so
that save in the
put it
memory.
in MD file, right? Like, do
Exactly.
not comment test to stabilize the code, because we've seen that in real life with humans too, right? Like,
Exactly.
we do that ourselves, like comment it out because we need a pass rate, right? And then,
Leadership wants 100% green.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So
So we would normally create a Jira ticket to fix it later, right? So, like, that's okay, but don't just comment it out and forget about it.
yeah, so that's a good comment you mentioned. Like I didn't do that, so I could specifically ask AI like, hey, make sure you use Jira MCP to create actually a Jira task for it, and don't just
If you
comment it out.
ever comment it out, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So that's where I think something I'm doing like with open source work, and I can deep dive more in terms of that. Like, how do you do like use LLM as a judge? And that's where I've been doing some research for the last few months on some
Mhm.
open source projects as well. Like, how do you trust AI? Like, how do you make sure it is doing what you asked it to do? Which is very tough in this day and age where if everyone is
Yeah.
using agents, like how do
Yeah.
you
Tell us
trust?
more about that.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I had these kind of some examples where uh, AI is generating like 1,000, 10,000, 20,000 lines of codes every day, right? It becomes impossible as a human for me, who has the understanding of the code, who has a background in automation and programming, for me to manually like review 20,000 lines of code every day or every other day. It's just humanly like you need to trust AI to really, like you said, one way could you do it, like, hey, just have 2, 3 AIs and have them kind of compare each other's work and continue to do that until you still get to a 90-95% of sort of trust in terms of what sort of a work it is doing or it has done, right? So that's where kind of what I've been doing is doing some open research. Like one example I kind of give to the folks is, let's say if imagine like let's say you are a grader of a essay research where let's say there is 100 like multiple choice questions, right? And let's say 90% answers of that is A or whatever the first choice, right? And your AI is hallucinating and it's always it's providing the answer as A for every single answer of that 100 questions, right? So what will happen in that case? It will have a 90% pass rate because AI is always defaulting to the first item, first solution. And by default, by coincidence, 90% of the answers, correct answers, are the first choice, right? So in this case, what happens is your AI comes with a 90% uh, uh, pass rate where it obviously it's defaulting to the first solution, and where you feel great, like, hey, by coincidence, it came with a 90% stability, which for you, like, okay, that's good enough for you, and you will approve that, and that's related to any PR or any automation work that they're doing, right? So in that case, what I'm kind of coming up with is like, how do I, in this case, I have 2 AIs. First of all, humans uh, reviewing the work. So what I did was I pick up a set of like 600 sort of a visual tests where I manually reviewed every single UI of a app, where I compared the sort of a pre-release sort of a format of the visual of the app and versus post, how will it look like? And I manually kind of 600 use cases, I manually provided a pass or fail rate. And what I did was I used 2 AIs to grade that work every single time. So what I did was use couple of leverage codecs, Olama open source models, Claude code, and really had them to go through this 600 sort of UI enrichment. It went through every single app DOM element. And what one good thing about AI is it's not depending on any DOM elements. It's looking at the overall sort of how the page looks. So let's say if a model is element is behind a model, it will catch that issue. It will find that as a failure. So what I did was, in that case, I had them grade the work of those 3 AI, and on the top of those three, I put a LLM on the top of it, which kind of checks everyone's work in terms of pass and fail. And I use Cohen's Kappa, where basically it's like a measurement way of doing it. If if those 3 AIs are in agreement 2/3 of the time, which is like a 0.7 value on this Cohen Kappa measurement criteria, then you can trust with enough confidence, like, hey, I am good to go. I can trust the work of these 3 AI with enough confidence. And if the value is below zero point 0.7, let's say zero point 0.4 to zero point 0.7, that's where it still needs some sort of a more of a manual work to review that. And it's below that, then you cannot really trust the work of AI. So I kind of
Yeah.
set up this measurement criteria and put it into the open source, where if it comes with a value more than 0.7, then I can approve the release or approve that work with enough confidence by doing a spot check of the work, that, hey, I have the 3 AIs who grade each other and come up with a measurement. They agree with each other 2/3 of the time. That's where I'm able to more confidently trust their work as an LM, as a judge. And if anything is below that, what I will do is I will put a different pipeline which will pull that JSON response and put that as a Q&A for me to deep dive more in terms of like what criteria test cases did the AI did not agree, and that's where it will put that into for me to review manually as well. So
Yeah.
that's how kind of I build that, and I put into open source as well. Anyone can just download my Git
Yeah.
repo and try to run it as well.
Yeah, that's a great way to increase the confidence in the one AI, right? Like when you cross check it against 3 AIs and you take the, based on the algorithm, you calculate the confidence, which is now you're more confident about it, right? And you said that it still sets aside some things for you to review. So how does it decide like what to set aside for you?
Yeah, so that's where basically in the process, right? So let's say 2/3 of the time AIs agree with each other. The one third of scenarios which all three or they don't have enough confidence in terms of they are disagreeing on their work. That's where the harness comes in, where it reviews the work of each AI will provide a score from like 0 to 1 in terms of how confident they are in terms of their pass or fail rate. So they will come up with a score in terms of for the remaining 1/3 work, which they did not agree. In terms of from 0 to 1, they will come up with like based on that probability. These are the cases, in my case, or automation, or it could be whatever work you are doing. These are something that you should do a second look on because the AIs came up with a less confidence score on these items. That's where I think you should take a look. And that's where humans come in. I come in, I take a look where they did not agree, what's the low score that they had for these items. And that's where I can either ask them to rerun it or manually do it and kind of make sure I can spend most of my um, limited time on reviewing those sort of a negative scenarios that they've highlighted instead of just focusing on every single test, which is
Okay.
impossible, like I said, for
Yeah.
me as a human in the
Yeah.
loop to do that.
Yeah. That makes sense. That sounds great. And we'll share your open source link, hopefully, with our audience for them to check this out. So thanks for sharing all of that cool stuff with us. And I want to ask you a few quick rapid fire questions at the end. So the first thing is, what's the one thing that QA leaders get wrong when they first introduce AI to the teams?
I think one thing I could think of, and I can go a little bit deeper in this, but in terms of our QA engineers are a little afraid of like, hey, will that replace my job? Or will that, why are we bringing AI, right? So the way how they either present it, it's more of like making that team know that, hey, this is something that's going to improve your productivity. It's not to replace anyone's job. It's to kind of make
Oh.
everyone and that's how kind of you need to present that as a team. It's like you're a junior intern or a junior engineer for you to help you out, not to replace you.
Yeah, yeah, good advice. And if someone's starting from zero today, where they don't have any AI in their pipeline, what's the first thing that they should do?
Yeah, what I would say is if you have any questions, just ask AI. Like literally, if I have any doubt, like I don't even know like half the questions, right? I just ask AI like, hey, this is something I want to do. Help me where to start, right? Let's say if I'm a manual QA or I'm not from a QA background, just sit down with Claude Code or ChatGPT or Codex, right? Hey, and even ask AI to write a prompt for you, right? Just don't write some random 1 or 2 line of prompt. Ask AI to, hey, like I'm a junior engineer, I want to run automation. Give me a prompt to write to AI, like in terms of I in 6 months my goal would be to be able to write automation from scratch or to write scripts, right? And help it to help you, like to even write prompt and really be keep asking questions until you get to the right solution.
Mhm. Great. And what are you most excited about in this space over the next year?
Gosh, I mean, 1 year seems like a lifetime in this AI world where things change every few weeks. And obviously, like agentic AI has been a very big change in the last, I would say, since January. That and now with loops coming in and tags, I would say every week brings a change. And what I'm excited to see is like it has made a big change in web. What I want to see is like in mobile, especially visual automation, mobile app automation, how things change in the 1 year. And I would say if we are coming back next year, like from that 80% sort of a productivity and 80% and 20-30% gap that AI has currently, I would say it would easily be like less than 10%, if not more, by the time next year we are sitting. So will be more and more trusting the work that they are doing and kind of improving our productivity to do other sort of a work around it.
Awesome. Great. Um, and now, where can people find you, or where should people look for your work or articles or anything?
Yeah, I mean, I use my website for suneetmalhotra.com. I continue to push daily blogs in terms of what's changing in the AI space. So follow me on that, my LinkedIn, as well as GitHub, where I kind of pushed my all the open source work. So on all these 3 platforms, they can reach out to me.
Great. Thank you for sharing your work and your experience with us, Suneet. And thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.